It's like saying, I behave that. It's not just about changing the set of rules at the factory gate, which is good, please do it. I'm all for it. Okay, but saying that I will keep building a society and inequality on the one hand, and practicing inclusiveness on the other hand, that is not going to work. When we say we will continue to build an unequal society and create inclusiveness, what we are saying is, I'm going to keep mopping the floor dry with all the taps open and running. Okay? In the last 3 years, you've had all the major bodies of the world, including the World Bank and the IMF, coming out with documents on the inequality predicament and how much of a danger it is to growth itself. Okay? Even these guys who were quite happy to promote inequality earlier are now worrying about it. See, the very word inclusion, what does it mean? The word inclusion implies that somebody has been excluded. Otherwise, you won't have the word inclusion. Why do you need to include if there was no excluded? Who are the excluded in India? Let's have some real numbers and idea of who are the excluded people of India. And when we look at the excluded, we're going to learn 4 things. 4 things become very clear. 1, how massive the problem is. 2, how huge the task of being truly inclusive is. 3, that we are in, that we are in many, many levels becoming more exclusionist. And I propose to give you the data and ideas and for showing you that we're becoming more exclusionist in many ways. And 4, unlike the word inclusiveness, which makes us feel good, the knowledge of how exclusionist we are, we have to face then our own culpability in that process. Let me just say one thing, because since I'm here, throwing the wet blanket over the idea of inclusiveness, let me state very honestly that industry is slightly better. The most exclusionist institution in this country is the media. The most exclusionist, you at least have some diversity in industry, at least in the workforce, if not in the industrialists. But you do not have diversity in the media in terms of, you will not find anyone from lower caste groups, even at the chief sub-editor level. Tamil Nadu, Kerala are slightly exceptions. But nationally, you will find that the media are the most exclusionist institutions. So I'm not making out a case against industry and pro-media. In fact, I say that the media are the most exclusionist gang in the country. These multiple divides include caste, general, regional divides, etc. And by the way, because the media are so exclusionist, they react with such hysteria over the kind of problems you had in AIMS and elsewhere. So who are the excluded? Let's, for instance, look at who are the poor, because I'm trying to say that inclusion or inclusiveness is not about making better rules. Inclusiveness is a gigantic social transformation. It's a gigantic social transformation. Okay, so who are these? It's now your 60th year of independence, so it's worth taking a look back. After 60 years, who are the excluded? Who are the poor? Let's try dividing this up on the different divides in Indian society. Okay, let's, for instance, look at who are the Indian poor. 40% of the Indian poor are landless agricultural laborers. 45% are small and marginal farmers who own less than 1 acre, 1 hectare. Mostly less than 1 acre, but all 60% of your farmers own less than 1 hectare. That's 85% of the poor. 7.5% of the poor are rural artisans. Your cobblers, your weavers, your spinners, your beadie makers, the engineers of your countryside. These are your rural artisans. And all other groups come under what the economists mark as others. Urban poor, everybody else. This is who your poor people are. Something like 85% of rural households, 85% are landless, marginal, sub-marginal, or small farmers. That's 85% of rural households. And what is 85% of your poor? 40% landless, 45% small and marginal. That's who your poor people are mostly. Before I came in here, some of my friends were here, were discussing with me about how the government of India, what is the correct BPL figure today? Tell you something, it doesn't matter a damn. These are notions, these are definitions that don't really matter. Because, let me tell you, the government of India's latest 61st round of NSS and the Arjun Sen Gupta report, the National Commission for unorganized enterprises sector says that 836 million people. What's your population? 1.04 billion. Out of that, 836 million people live on less than 20 rupees a day. The World Bank definition is $1 a day. This is less than 50 cents a day. The World Bank definition of poverty is $1 a day. Okay? And you have two categories. You have $1 a day, $2 a day. I won't even go there. The Arjun, that's based on the National Sample Survey Report 60th and 61st rounds. 836 million people living on less than 50 cents a day. Now here's the fun. Most of these people are not below the poverty line. To gain that distinction, you must be living on less than 14 rupees a day. Then you will be below the poverty line because of the way we have conceptualized, changed, fiddled the definition. I can, before leaving this meeting, I can abolish poverty in India merely by changing and fiddling the definition. It doesn't mean much. Don't even go there. But this is the class phase of poverty. 40% landless, 45% small and marginal, 7.5% rural artisans, 7.5% all others. The second gigantic divide in India is the gender divide. The society, the bulk of work in agriculture, for instance, is done by the lowest paid people in your country, women, especially young adolescent girls. Okay? The bulk, 90% of paddy transplantation. How many times have you ever seen men bending over in the field doing the transplantation work which requires a lot of skill but which is categorized as unskilled labor? We have a very simple solution to holding down wages in agriculture. Anything that women do is unskilled. That's how we define unskilled labor. Because they do most of the work. If you have to start paying them a fair wage, the economics of it will change completely. So, to give you an idea, 67% of agricultural labor is done by women. Of a lot of agricultural laborers' tasks are done by women. 90% of paddy transplantation is done by women. 76% of seeding is done by women. 84% of transportation of crop from field to home is done by women. And they are the lowest paid people in your country. That is the second. Oh, by the way, this more, the Times of India, which I just picked up on the thing, says the divide is stark even in the premium B schools of the country, how few women you have. That's today's Times of India. It actually recognizes the divide. The third phase of Indian exclusion is the regional phase. Though poor people exist everywhere in India, they are more or less concentrated in 12 regions. In Tamil Nadu, that would be South Tamil Nadu. Okay? Pudukkottai, Ramnad, Tinuveli, that side. Most of your poor people, it's not that there are no poor people in northern Tamil Nadu, but the concentration, large concentration of poor is in your, poverty has a regional phase and it's important, we'll come back to that later. In the last 50 years, the gap between regional divides has grown everywhere except Kerala. The gap between East UP and West UP has grown. The gap between South and North Tamil Nadu has grown. The gap between Western Orissa and Coastal Orissa has grown. Okay? The gap between Northern Karnataka and Southern Karnataka has grown. Only Kerala managed to bridge that gap. It's useful to ask yourself why. It goes back to a particular period in history. And the extremely last of the phases of poverty that I'm talking about, of exclusion that I'm talking about, is one that most people of our background seated in this room are extremely uncomfortable with and immediately start protesting, the caste phase of it.